I think I'll go ahead and call our March 2021 meeting of the Paducah Independent Board of Education to order. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Koji?
Here.
Ms. Hancock? Here. Ms. Howard?
Here.
Dr. Hudson?
Here.
Dr. LeBoon?
Here. Have we established a quorum?
Yes, we have.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I so move. Second.
And actually, I need to approve the agenda with one adjusted item, which is item 5.9, which is in the consent agenda for unpaid leave. There's just an update here to clarify some dates, and I'll get to that in the at the consent agenda. But so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. Dr. Shively, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda is item 3.0, which is superintendent reports. Item 3.1 is student achievement, and that's Will Black, assistant superintendent.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to just give an update on our racial equity initiative. We have an equity action committee that has been meeting weekly for the last few weeks, and this committee is actually has focused on three things so far. First, getting to know each other.
Good. The audio is a little muffled for me in the room. I'm assuming the audio for the Facebook Live might not be very good. Is that, can people hear okay on that?
Is this better? If I take off my mask?
Much better, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm good. I've been vaccinated, so.
Okay, all right.
Is that better?
Yes, much
Okay.
better.
The Equity Action Committee has focused on three things so far. Number one, getting to know each other. The committee includes people from different backgrounds from our community, different roles in our community. And so we spent some time getting to know each other, also getting to know the facilitators, and that is our University of Kentucky professors, as well as Dr. Cleveland and Roz Akins, who are from Millennium Learning Concepts. And Dr. Cleveland is also a professor at Eastern Kentucky University. And we focused also on understanding the audit process that's getting ready to begin and analyzing survey and focus group questions. So the committees had actually quite a bit of input on that, been able to ask any question that they need to ask. And I really appreciate Dr. Vincent for taking the time to do that. And also I appreciate the committee for being willing to meet every single week for the last few weeks. So that's been great. And so just to let everyone know, the equity audit should begin in April. It will begin with some surveys of students, teachers, parents, community members, and also some focus groups. And so we will give you an update on that process and where we are in terms of collecting data. So any questions on that before I dive into some academic issues? All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about overcoming COVID learning loss. Last week was our first week back with about 68% of our students coming 4 days a week. We still have the remaining group all virtual, and so we have so far left Wednesday as a virtual day for teachers to be able to intervene as necessary with support, not just intervene, but to teach and support only virtual students, really give them some attention. But I want to talk about the long-term process of overcoming COVID learning loss, because COVID, you know, the gaps that occur from being out during the pandemic really do affect, or really do include all groups. All students are impacted somewhat by this, some more than others. And so we're in the process right now of assessing the gaps, where they are with as many kids as we can. And so let's talk about that first. Our first step is assessing student needs, the ones who are in person. We're doing a few in-person assessments to just check where they are. What we found is that, you know, there may be a few more gaps when kids come back than we saw on tests that were at home, and that's for a variety of reasons. But as the year has progressed, there may be things they've forgotten. There may be things that they didn't really fully master. But we are, with that 68% who are now in person 4 days a week, we're really working to verify, you know, what have they mastered and where are their gaps still. And by gap, I mean, what are the things that they should have learned by now but they have not, okay? So we're doing that through formative assessments. Some of those are classroom assessments. Some of those are more standardized, like STAR, reading and math, which we give in elementary and middle school. And so those assessments have been very helpful so far. We've struggled somewhat with virtual students. We've invited as many as we can into the school, and we're going to continue to do that to take those assessments. And for some, you know, they're taking them at home, and that's good data. But it really helps to have them in person. We can really verify, you know, we can answer questions, we can verify how the test was taken, and it really helps us ensure that, you know, just to understand where the gaps are. So the next step is identifying gaps and prioritizing them, because one of the things we've already seen is that we have more gaps in math than we do in reading, and I'm not surprised at that. But reading, you know, you can improve in reading simply by reading books of your choice, library books, novels, nonfiction. Your reading level can increase just by doing that. Whereas in math, you know, it really helps to have instruction. It really helps to have some direct instruction where you're getting feedback from a teacher. So the initial data that we've seen so far does show a bigger gap in math than reading. But luckily, the reading gap is not as wide as I thought it would be, at least so far. There are definite there are areas of need that we need to fill, but it's better than I thought it was going to be. So what we're looking at in terms of overcoming COVID learning loss, and again, I'm taking this from research that has, you know, been published so far, recommendations that have been published so far in the education, I guess, the academic education world. They really emphasize that, you know, learning loss on this scale could really take up to 3 years to overcome. Certainly, even within the fourth quarter, we can make an improvement. And so we're going to use this fourth quarter. I've met with each school in terms of how we're thinking about the fourth quarter, what we're prioritizing, and you know, we're looking at what are the most important grade level standards that have to be mastered in this year, so that in the fourth quarter we can, you know, we can focus on those that we have not taught yet, as well as the skills that they may have missed. And so if we can knock those out right now, that fourth quarter can really help us in the summer and in the fall, you know, so that we really keep track as much as possible. So in the following 3 years, starting in the fall, what does research really show are the best practices for overcoming learning loss, especially learning loss that might occur over an entire school year? And there are cases of that. The most recent is probably the Katrina hurricane. And in New Orleans, there were a number of schools that actually that had kids out for an entire school year. so that some kids lost maybe just a semester, some kids lost 3 quarters, some kids lost all 4 quarters. And so the best practice there indicated that, just going back and trying to fill all the gaps they missed is not the best way to go about it. And the reason is that the rate of improvement was just simply not fast enough to catch them up. And so what research showed is that the schools that focused on grade level standards, okay, the standards in other words, of the next year. So the kid they missed most of 3rd grade, but when they started 4th grade, the school really focused on the 4th grade standard first, and then backward mapped to see what are the prerequisite skills that have to be mastered to get to that 4th grade level skill. What research showed is the schools that did that accomplished much more student achievement than those who just went all the way back to 3rd grade and started teaching as fast as they could. The ones that held the higher standard and expected kids to get there, being strategic about what learning gaps to fill along the way, they made much faster progress. So the question is, how do we chart the most efficient path to closing achievement gaps then in our district? And then how do we ensure equity for all students? How do we make sure we can use the resources that we have to fill kids' needs, to meet kids' needs equitably? And so we actually are beginning the process with our teachers this Wednesday with a group of teachers who are going to engage in an hour-and-a-half workshop to get their feedback. Also invited administrators with a consulting group called TNTP. They're actually a nonprofit, but they used to be called the New Teacher Project. And this group really has some of the leading research on how to approach COVID learning loss. And they're going to walk through that research with us. We're going to get feedback from teachers as well as administrators and really begin the process of planning the next 3 years in terms of academic intervention and support. So there are 2 studies that came out. They're free online. You can actually read them. One it came out actually in 2018. It's called The Opportunity Myth. And the other is Learning Acceleration Guide. There's 2 versions. One came out in April of last year, and then they updated it this fall. And that's again from the group called TNTP now, which is a nonprofit consulting group that helps districts tackle issues like these. And so in both these studies, what they show is providing access to priority grade level work is key. So we're already beginning that in the 4th quarter, asking our schools to identify what are the skills at each grade level that are critical that we need to really ensure get mastered in this 4th quarter, and how many of these skills can we prioritize both in the core and in our intervention time. And then strategically filling gaps along the way, what they call just-in-time learning, to where, if you're learning, about, let's say, systems of equations in math in middle school, that right before it, you're learning about expressions. And we're going to give you a crash course in expressions and integers and order of operations right before we start that grade level task. So this will affect after-school interventions, this will affect summer interventions, and of course enrichment will be maybe even beyond grade level, or maybe extra practice on some deeper things. Enrichment may also be just fun, and I think this summer we're going to have to make sure we're engaging kids around important things that are also fun in science and math and social studies. So I know the makerspace is going to be a part of that, and I think we can get in some awesome experiences there for kids who do participate in the summer interventions that we offer. So let's not forget about social emotional supports, and we really, again, our district is interested in maintaining and building our system for supporting kids with their non-academic needs. What are their emotional needs? that we may need to really provide extra support for, especially after the pandemic. And how can we best provide these supports? What resources do we already have? You know, we already have a relationship with Four Rivers Behavioral Health, as well as Mountain Counseling. And those two groups have been instrumental in providing some intensive counseling for kids as needed. How do we continue to use that support, and how do we expand that? Also, how do we expand our partnerships with the local nonprofits, such as Child Watch, who provides counseling services and supports, as well as churches. And so we've worked with churches this year, and we want to continue to expand that partnership. And again, we just want to make sure that we're assessing kids' needs effectively and then meeting those needs as we go. Those are the main things that we are targeting here in the next few weeks, and I look forward to updating you on the feedback the teachers give us, and as well as a more detailed plan as we move forward. Certainly, we're going to use every resource that we can use here in the fourth quarter, but we're looking forward to the financial support that's coming from the federal government. That will help us also to meet students' needs, whether it is providing resources, curriculum resources, or even supporting maybe some extra hires to help us meet kids' needs. So, any questions?
Other questions from the board? I have one. You're talking about the backwards mapping. So your example was third graders go to fourth grade. You realize you start in with the fourth grade curriculum, and then you figure out what they haven't mastered from third grade. That would apply not just in a COVID-19 pandemic also.
Correct.
So, I mean, you're going to have fourth graders. I guess they'll be in fifth grade, so you're going to do the same thing with fifth grade. But
That's right.
once you identify in your backwards map, what are we going to need to be thinking about in terms of how you catch those kids up? Is it after-school tutoring? Is it more help in the classroom? Is it weekend, summer school?
Probably all the above. Okay, so in other words, there's probably no way around extra time dedicated to this, just given the scale of the number of objectives, the scale of the problem that we're facing. And so what this is about is making kids grow, helping kids grow faster than the average kid. Okay, so in order to catch up, you have to grow faster than the average kid. You can't just, if you're down here not making progress, you can't just make progress at a normal rate. In order to catch up, you have to make progress at a faster than average rate. And so what we're really talking about is a strategy that's often reserved in education for gifted students. But in fact, it's extremely effective for all students, and that is learning acceleration. Basically, where we're going to assume you can do this. We're going to expect you to do this skill, and we believe in you, and we're going to provide the supports because we've thought out all these steps of, step by step how to do it, and we're going to give you extra time. And so if you add extra time, extra supports, the right resources, and thoughtful, objective mapping, like you were saying, where you're charting the most efficient course to that grade level mastery, I think we have a good chance of creating that faster than average growth for kids. And already in our district, we have, over the past few years, found methods that create that kind of growth. One of the programs we've been using throughout the pandemic is called Reading Plus. It's a really effective personalized reading program online, and it, even this year, has produced some pretty impressive gains. Kids can do that at home. We actually have a church who is already, in fact, this is before the pandemic, they volunteered, this is Washington Street Baptist Church, to work with us to pilot the use of these very programs, these reading programs, in their after-school program, because it's fairly easy to monitor and administer. And so one of our goals is to leverage our community resources like Washington Street and other tutoring programs, Boys and Girls Club, and make sure everybody's on the same page. So how, if you're going to make a kid grow in reading, if you're going to really give them the best shot if you're basically going to empower them to grow at their fastest possible rate, what are the best practices? What are the programs we need to use? What works? What doesn't work? What do we not need to spend time on? What do we need to prioritize time on? These are all the steps that we've already been going through and that we want to accelerate.
How do you adjust? I think kids get kind of an expectation. This may be a little more as kids get older than younger, I'm not sure, but they get a little more of a concept of how they're doing, how they're making it. You know, the kids that are going in behind, I mean, that have more catch up to do, how are you going to make them understand that they're catching up, that they just aren't quite where they were supposed to be for a fourth grader and be discouraged about that? Is my question making sense?
That's a great.
So it's sort of like you're getting,
question.
you know, early on in your fourth grade year, you're getting feedback that, yeah, I did okay my third grade year, but we're sort of going back and saying, hey, we got to learn this from third grade, but yet we're moving on to fourth grade. How do we keep them from being measured and then feeling like they're getting down because they're not, like one of the things I think has been positive at the middle school and other schools is, you know, the all-time best. You know, you walk in and you see the all-time best, you know, so they're getting feedback. Even if their all-time best wasn't the best to somebody else, it's their all-time best. I mean, is it those kinds of things that are going to keep them from being discouraged or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, in the same research that I was referencing, one of the most important things we can do is, number one, really assess and try to support having every student feel a sense of belonging, number one, to the school and to the class. This is something that is being assessed by our racial equity initiative, by that audit. And a true sense of belonging means I fit here. Like, this is my class, I'm supposed to be here. And I know this is the right place for me, okay? And I feel comfortable, I feel treated, you know, with respect, I feel supported, etc. That's the first step. Second step is to have high expectations for each kid. So that, number one, the first thing we're going to try, you know, to convince you of and to demonstrate from our perspective is that you can do it. Number one, you are an intelligent student who can grow faster than the average student. And the only thing, the main thing, I should say, that you need to do as a student is to commit to working hard every day. And so we always say the best motivator in education is success. There are other ways to motivate kids that are extrinsic rewards. I'm not saying those don't have a place, they do, but the best one is a student's own success. And as an elementary principal, as a middle school teacher, and a high school teacher for a very short time, but I saw that. And so what we do in our district is we have kids chart their own progress. One of the best research-based methods for motivating a child is to have them chart how they're doing. And if you support them the right way, they start to realize, if I do these things each day, maybe it's I read 4 articles on Reading Plus, or let's say I read 4 articles at 80% accuracy, and answering questions with 80% accuracy every week. Out of 5 days, I'm gonna do 4 articles at 80%, 4 out of 5. If a child does that, we can guarantee that child will grow twice the rate of an average child. We can guarantee it. With technology now, the algorithms are so good in many cases that you can predict it with incredible accuracy. We've done studies inside our district We had at McNabb Elementary School, we proved that it worked with Reading Plus on K-Prep in 2019. 23% gain in proficient and distinguished kids in 4th grade in one year. That's incredible. And that was because what we did was and it wasn't just 4th grade. 5th grade had a big gain too. So did any grade that participated in that process did well. And why was that? Because the kids saw what they can do. They had a vision for how to raise their reading level on their own. And yes, we helped them along the way. We did some lessons on skills they needed, but they were the ones that determined that pathway, and they were the ones that quickly bought in to the power of hard work and realizing that if you work hard each day in this way that I'm showing you, I can promise you, you will grow. What a cool promise. I mean, you can actually make that promise. That's not just, that's real. And so our goal is to do that kind of thing with every kid in every subject. Now, not all subjects have a program that's as clean or as easy to monitor as Reading Plus, but there are best practices in each subject that can help us determine those things. And so as kids watch that graph go up, as they watch their improvement, they become incredibly motivated. And what we started to see is kids going home, kids who may not have done homework in the past, extremely excited to go home and do more Reading Plus articles. Why? Because they were going to go from novice to proficient in 1 year. And sure enough, we had kids that did that. Now, that's a hard task to go from novice to proficient in 1 year. It usually takes 2 years. But we had kids that did it, and it required a lot of extra work. But man, they were fired up because they saw what they could do. They believed that they could do it.
Questions?
Regarding professional development, have you thought that far in advance for teachers?
Yes, sir. So we're looking at, again, I really am interested in getting teacher feedback before we make concrete plans or finalized plans. And so this Wednesday is just a first step there. And so through a collaborative process, we would like to do some, maybe a few simple spring workshops like PDs that are not overwhelming. Teachers right now have a very full plate and just trying to get everything done, trying to assess the priorities. And so we want them to use, the resources they know, the strategies that they know that work. We want to focus on those for the 4th quarter. But in the summer, we want to do some, probably some form of a retreat for teacher leaders and administrators, some form of learning about best practices here with overcoming learning loss. And we really want to employ the same tactic that we used at the beginning of the pandemic, where our teachers, who are very effective in the classroom, we get their guidance and opinion on what would be effective for PD. And then we actually empower them to help with that PD, actually help plan it and help execute it. And we did that in the beginning with the pandemic looming. We rolled out a full implementation of the Microsoft Teams platform. And to do that in 1 year was totally overwhelming. I mean, most districts would never roll it out that quickly. So we want to employ that same tactic because the teachers did an amazing job of figuring out what was a high priority, what actually mattered to teachers, and how do we deliver it quickly, how do we support them. We want to involve a leadership team of teachers on that. And then, begin to roll that out with all teachers toward the end of the summer, to where we're really doing extensive PD in August, and a lot of time probably spent on prioritizing objectives and really providing resources to teachers in a way that teachers can understand and have time to process and have some planning time to actually plan to implement that in their curriculum. So
Will there be anything along differentiating instruction, especially those gaps that's going to be, if I'm a 6th grade teacher and I've got 5th grade coming to me from 3 different schools, and I'm starting at 6th grade, but you see the gaps, so what would
I think it's going to be critical that we be able to differentiate in every way. And one of the advantages that we've already seen with our new technology, with the student Surface Go devices, is that when we have that paired with good assessments, we're able to prescribe different things for different kids, different forms of practice, so if you need a little extra practice on this, we're all getting the same lesson. We all have access to that grade level thing, but to the grade level content and practice. But we're gonna start here. As soon as you master this, we want to be able to hand you something else. Like, we want to be ready for the next thing. We don't want to waste anybody's time, and that goes for a kid who's behind as well as a kid who might be ahead. So that differentiation, and we've actually been talking about a model of differentiation that comes from Meade County in Kentucky. They did some really interesting things with their collaborative classes at the middle school, where they use technology, and we actually piloted that at Paducah Middle, not this year, but the past year, so 1920. And in that year, we saw gains even with that short pilot. We saw some higher student engagement and better practice, more learning. But it was doing exactly what you're asking, which is allowing personalized practice, but still giving access to grade level content. It's both. How do we do both at the same time?
Dr. Hudson, you were asking about the teacher development side of implementing those tools, right? I mean, the professional development to get the teachers to be able to implement those tools to really effectively differentiate.
Yes, and I should say this, that, you know, it's a challenge. We have a limited number of days in our calendar for professional development, but in the summertime, we have a little bit more flexibility, and I'm looking forward to taking advantage of that. And I know Dr. Shively's always up for, you know, thinking creatively about our days in a way that we can increase PD, professional development, if we need to. And this is going to be a year where there's probably going to be some extra professional development. So not just the professional development, but I would even go one step further and say, you know, how do we provide the support throughout the year? In other words, the really coaching is what that would be, or supports where if a teacher has a question about a program or a resource that they can go, or a technique even, that they can go, they know who to go to, and we can hopefully provide that support. So.
I know you guys are early. I'm just going to ask one other quick question, because I know you're meeting next week with your teachers. A lot of this will come out over the next couple of meetings, but it seems to me that our experience this year getting kids devices in hands, solving some of the problems with them hooking up and using them, having, you know, the internet access they need, is a tool that we haven't had before to provide extended school hours next year, or tutoring at night, or school-based programs for extra learning at home. And I almost have wondered if just simply getting the kids using those devices at home won't get some of the kids in a position to do more homework than weren't doing homework as much before, because it's more
very possible.
Because it's a little more interesting, or it's a little more effective. It's a little something different. They didn't leave their worksheet at home or whatever. I mean, at school.
That's right. It also could. I mean, I think, just again referring to the example before, if our students see the purpose and the meaning and the power in the practice that they're doing, we have a much greater chance of them doing extra practice, because it's fun, they're having success, and they're growing. You know, in that they're being motivated just by their own success. So I hope we can do that. That is, you know, that takes a lot of again, that all that doesn't happen by accident. That has to all be fostered by an effective teacher. And our most effective teachers create that, you know, where we're getting kids growing. It's not where it's common in a classroom for a kid to grow a year and a half or 2 years in one. And that's what we need, especially after a year like this. I will mention that in terms of, I know Mrs. Copeland, Dr. Shively, and I have been working on, figuring out how do we maximize the future federal dollars. How do we deploy those dollars in a way that maximizes the benefit to kids and extends our ability to provide interventions. So how long can we go with enhanced interventions, or increased number of support, or sorry, increased number of interventions or increased support? That depends on how we leverage these dollars, and I think so. We're really looking at how do we get the biggest bang for the buck out of that.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Paducah Tillman High School Secondary Traumatic Stress Group, Weathering the Storm, and Principal Stieg.
Okay, guys, now come on up. Send my necklace. We good? First of all, thank you guys so much for having us tonight. Can you take that off better?
Yeah.
We're really, really excited about this group and our initiative and what we're doing. So I'm just going to kind of tell you a little bit about the reason why we got into it and introduce everybody. And then we have a PowerPoint that we set up for you that we presented to the faculty and staff. And we're going to show that to you when we've added a few things because we got to practice on them first. But first of all, I'd like to introduce everybody. Guys, y'all come on out down here. Behind me is Jared Wynn. He teaches science. We have biology. Amy Box with Family and Consumer Science. Ben Sig with our PE teacher. Erin Moorhead in Special Ed. Of course, our Dean, Shonda Burris. And then Cassandra Newsom, Guidance Counselor, and Rebecca Rogers, our Guidance Counselor. So we're really happy. We've got one more person, Chris Johnson. He's not here tonight. But we have a really neat group of people that all joined together for this initiative. It's secondary traumatic stress, and they're going to explain what that is. And to be honest, it's something where, I'm an old basketball coach, and I'm a suck-it-up buttercup kind of person. And I realized during one of the co-ops that I'm in for principals, we had someone talking about this, and it was an initiative from UK. Dr. Jenny Spring is in charge of it. And she started talking, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, counselor-y, touchy, feel good. But then I thought, no, I started really listening to it. And I thought, first of all, as a principal, this is something that I need to grow, and I need to be able to do better for our faculty and staff. And so I listened to what she said, and first of all, it's research-based, which hit me being an old math and science teacher. And I talked to the counselors and Ms. Burris, and I said, is this something you think that our staff could use or learn from or benefit from here at Paducah Tillman? And they said yes. I asked counselors, and of course they said yes. And then I started listening to it more and getting into it. And then we surveyed our faculty and staff, and then we started talking to our faculty and staff. And I realized, you know what, this is a good thing. Because at first I thought, well, yeah, we're all under stress. It's COVID. This has nothing to do with COVID. Now, COVID is adding stress to everybody, of course, and what we're doing does help with some of that. But it's basically what we deal with every day as educators and dealing with students that bring in their stress, and then our teachers deal with that stress and become stressed themselves. And it's just like the old saying that you can't, on the airplane, you've got to put your oxygen mask on before you put your kids on. And I've always been a firm believer that in the classroom, if our teachers aren't happy and aren't right, we're not going to be able to educate our students. And I'm really big on retaining teachers and getting the best teachers. And I think through this program and what we've been doing so far, we introduced it 3 weeks ago, I really think we're on the right track to doing these things. So without further ado, let's get everybody down here that's going to present. And the good thing too is that our presenters are teachers. It's not me, it's not our counselors, it's not our dean, it's the teachers. And so our other teachers get to hear what they have to say, which I think sometimes is really, really important. Okay, so y'all come on in. Here, you can have this thing. I'm putting the line cord on. Uh-oh.
Sorry, folks at home.
Right, yeah.
Our group, I think, is a little more interesting sometimes than the administrators, so. STS stands for Secondary Traumatic Stress, also known as compassion fatigue. Secondary traumatic stress is the emotional duress that we feel when we hear, about traumatic events from our students. So you are indirectly affected by this, but it doesn't mean that because we're indirectly affected that it doesn't happen. So we, as Ms. Stig stated, we wanted to educate our staff on, I told them all when we met in the auditorium that they looked kind of pitiful, and I said, this is the reason why, it has a name for it. And we also wanted to discuss how this applies to staff, because it doesn't just affect teachers, it affects secretaries, cafeteria professionals, custodial staff, assistants. It affects everyone that works in the school. So this is something that is unavoidable as a staff member of a school. Also, it's comparable to nurses or EMTs or police officers. They experience this all the time, and there's new research about this also occurs often among staff and teachers. First, I want to give you an example of what STS is not. Because when I first heard the term, I just kind of thought it was maybe just burnout, things like that, but it is not that at all. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so this is of somebody I know. So you're in your 14th year of teaching. Your students come to you with disadvantages, but you thrive on their abilities and potential. You're in the sandwich generation, where you feel like you're taking care of your kids and your parents at the same time. You may feel like you're losing your best friend. You've had not one, not two, but 3 flat tires from hub construction. You restarted your surface a few times. The middle school has kinvoed you to let you know that your son may be failing math. And then maybe you just found out you owe the cafeteria money, you have a balance. So this is what we call irritation and burnout. So this is not comparable to secondary traumatic stress. But you may have all that going on, and then a parent that you have built a really good rapport with passes away from COVID. Or you have a student that doesn't have running water to bathe. Excuse me a moment. Take a drink of my water. I chewed gum on my wedding day to help my nerves, but my coworker back there said I better spit my gum out. So I had to bring the water bottle. Or maybe you have a student that's sick and they go home and you tell them drink plenty of fluids, and they say there's no food or drink in the house. Maybe you have a student that says they're scared of a family member or they've been abused. Those are all examples of STS. They're hard to hear, they're hard to deal with, and it tears us up inside. But it's also a result of the brain doing its job. It's an alarm that goes off, and that's what happens when we hear those things. It has a name now. It occurs because the brain is trying to protect us by staying highly alert. And so we get in this high alert stage, and then we may experience things like depression or loneliness, or fatigue, and we are understanding that no teacher or staff member can do their best work when this is going on. So how does this apply to staff? So, let me see, maybe my next slide. No, I'm still on the third thing. Don't worry, I'm going to finish up here. Whether you're a teacher, custodian, cafeteria professional, or librarian, every staff member cares deeply about their students. And that means being present to the traumas they bring into school, such as poverty, grief, racism, family problems, drug abuse. The emotional and physical toll is often severe. Even if we haven't endured the trauma ourselves, we experience those symptoms, as I mentioned: loneliness, depression, anxiety, and it's just really not avoidable at all. So the recovery part of it, which you'll hear from my team members in a little bit, involves helping get our brains out of this alarm mode, this high alert stage. Our administration is very good about acknowledging that this is a thing. They care about recovery, and so far it's been a burden on teachers and staff, and they're just kind of saying, hey, you know, we know you have a story, we hear you, and we want to see you succeed, we want to help you. So before moving on to my next point, I want you to picture, close your eyes if you want to. If you feel uncomfortable about it, do not close your eyes. But close your eyes, and I want you to picture a teacher's lounge in 1973, which those of you board members, back in the day, there was like an actual room that was a teacher's lounge where it had like couches and vending machines and stuff. So, okay, so close your eyes, so picture this. So let's see, olive green couches. Now we're in 1973, y'all. Pristine hair and clothes. Smoking. A lot of smoking going on in a closed room with doors shut, I know. White people, this was 73, finishing off their can of tab, laughing and discussing pranks students had pulled, maybe listening to the mimeograph in the background, maybe discussing a bad day or an unruly student. So, now I want you to picture what the teacher's lounge looks like in 2021. There's not one. There's not a physical teacher's lounge. There's good things. We have much better technology. The mimeograph is gone. More diversity. We have staff behind the screen. We have a lot of sitting. Not much connection or communication. Teachers have evolved. Oh, okay, you can open your eyes now, sorry. Teachers have evolved. Having a bad day has evolved. And schools are realizing the very real presence of this. So, due to recognizing that this STS, as I've talked about, is going on amongst staff, the storm chasers were established, and Ms. Steve read off their names earlier. And she didn't mention this, but we meet usually every Wednesday during our NTI days in the meeting. We do a short meeting, and then we also meet together with about 4 or 5 other schools across the state and the University of Kentucky. And that's usually a full-day meeting when we meet then. So the purpose of our team is to develop an understanding of STS, to have an opportunity to speak your truth. Because what we're saying here is your experiences have value. To increase the competency of all staff to respond to STS. And to increase the capacity of the school to plan and implement improvements. And promote staff wellness and resiliency. So that is our purpose. That's how all of this started. And Jared is going to speak next on the data and charts. And then Ben and Amy will talk about what we've already implemented so far in just a short amount of time. So this is a really good team, and we're glad to be here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thank y'all for being here. So she's already covered this very well, but I like pictures and I like graphs here. So again, whenever we have direct trauma, that's when you're actually getting hit with something. This is when personally something in my life has gone wrong and it's caused me to have issues or caused me to have some suffering. But indirect trauma is again happening whenever something comes in through my door that I really can't control. It's my job to be responsible for their emotional state. But I still have to control what I'm doing myself. And so, just like we were saying, sometimes you have kids that come in and, they haven't eaten since the weekend. There's a lot of issues that you have to kind of take in with your job. And it might not affect you directly, but it can affect the different ways that you react to your children and how you react to different things throughout the school year. Don't touch that. All right. Again, it's an expected occupational hazard for teachers. We deal with a lot of humanity, and with a lot of humanity comes a lot of humanity's problems. And it's our ability it's in our job to help our kids be resilient to it, but we also have to understand how it affects us and how we are able to recover from it if we're going to help them, right? So we sent out a survey. We didn't write the survey, they wrote the survey. And there's a lot of graphs out here, and there's a lot of decimals and things like that. But I want to just draw a couple of the attention here. So we had about 65, 70 people respond. We had people from about 27 to 65. So it was not a lot of our youngest teachers, but a lot of our senior staff. We had about 80% of our responses were teachers. We had most of our administrators, most of our counselors, and then our administrative support staff all responded to the survey. And what we found, if you look over here, is that, long story short, how informed we are about how to be resilient, how to take care of ourselves with safe coping mechanisms. How we felt empowered to lead each other into more healthful coping strategies. We found out that we were kind of in the 25th percentile. So there's a lot of numbers on there, but the 25th percentile is generally not a good one. We would like to be higher than that, right? And so what we're looking for is to inform our staff a little bit more about how they can be resilient, how they can take a little bit more charge of their own mental health, and really be okay with the emotions that they're feeling and use them to process and be more supportive for the students. All right, and so the second one that we had to look at, and this is the particular graph over here, is how affected we are as a staff in general by our experiences. So again, if you look at our mean score here, we're in the 50th percentile in terms of effectiveness. Ideally, we would like to be in the 75th or something like that, to where we are not having as many negative cognitions, meaning you just can't get the bad thought out of your head, or negative in the arousal subscale, which means, hey man, I really felt like watching that football game, but I didn't feel like doing it because my brain was too full of things that I otherwise should have been doing. Avoiding subscale. If something is hard, if I'm being challenged, do I go into it the way I normally would, or do I let my previous trauma affect my behavior in this situation? The intrusion subscale. How many of these thoughts pop up into my head whenever I'm trying to go to bed at night? All of these things are different things that These are trying to measure. And what we found, this is a very complicated graph. It took me a while to figure it out. I had to ask questions. Is that if you look at your 4 fingers, basically 1 out of 4 of our staff leaves the school building in the red zone, which means 75 to 100% of the time they live feeling pretty down about their various experiences. They have some things that can be quantified as traumatized. Either they experience one or all of these things every day or close. At the same point, over here in the green, you have another quarter of your staff that really doesn't seem to have it very much at all. And so we have 2 things going on here. We have one group of people who is either not very honest or very good at coping, and it's something that we really need to explore and help them feel empowered to help the rest of us. And then there's some of us over here that feel extremely overwhelmed very regularly. And that's not how you're going to put yourself in the best position to be the best for your kids, right? And so what we want to do, and this is what Amy and Ben are going to talk about for the rest of it, is just the different ways that we have started coming together to try to help, this crew that's over here on this side, spread the joy a little bit over here. It doesn't mean that they're older teachers, it doesn't mean that they're young teachers, it just means some people that have some resilient skills that they're able to generate. And the more we feel empowered to share them with each other and take them from each other, then the better off we'll be. So I think that's it. I think that's most of it for me. So that's all. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for letting us come here today. One of the things that hit home with me, or that that I talked about with this was, we had a meeting December the 18th. I also put out a meeting and said, hey, we're going to have this program. We'd like teachers to be involved with it. And I thought, you know what, that's something I can do, for myself. And one of the things that I told her was, us as staff members or as teachers or employees, we first have to be able to help ourselves. If I can't help me, then how can I be expected to help a 14 or 15-year-old kid when they're struggling with whatever that stress may be? And one of the things that I applaud her at is I told her, or we talked about in our meeting that we've had, that we'll get a lot of great buy-in from our staff if it comes from teachers. Because they see us as teachers doing this, not that it's necessarily coming from administration of, hey, here's what we're going to do. So the buy-in is coming from teachers, the 4 of us that have sat down and, done this and, put this together. We talked to the staff about it, and we gave this. The first thing that we want to tell those staff members is, hey, we're here to support you. We know that everybody has issues. 365 days ago, we didn't know where we would be today, or the issues that we would have. There's teachers that struggle with technology and have had to, this may be their last year teaching, they may be set to retire, and have now been forced to do half of their teaching through a window screen, through a camera. And just doing that alone, and now adding everything else to it that's also with this pandemic, has created all this extra stress. For me, the personal thing is I experienced it about April of last year. I didn't realize what it was like to have anxiety. Never really had it. All I know is, I watch the news and I listen to people talk, and I'm shopping through the grocery store, and I notice my heart rate increases, my breathing rate increases. All that is increasing because now I'm around people I don't know. And do they have this? Am I going to get it? Am I going to take it home to my family? So now I'm having anxiety of just going to the grocery store and doing basic things. One of the other things that we talked about with staff is the willingness to be open. A lot of times somebody walks up to you, how you doing? 90% of the time we say, great, fine. You know, it's one of the things I talk about with kids in class is people ask us questions, especially parents, when they have children, ask you a question specifically, how was your day? When you respond with just, oh, great, it was okay. Well, as parents, you genuinely want to know how their day was. And as educators and as people, when we ask somebody, man, how are you doing? It's okay to be open. That's one of the things that we try to tell our staff is it's okay to be vulnerable. If you're not having a great day, if something's going on, man, let us know. You know, the fourth one there, being able to talk about the stigma of mental health. You know, some people really struggle with going to visit and talk with somebody and have a conversation of their mental health, of being okay. You know, for me to stand up here and talk about, I have some anxiety still. You know, yeah, I'm fully vaccinated, I wear a mask every time, but there's still some hidden anxieties there that exist because of the what if. I would feel horrible if I brought it home to my kids and something were to happen, even though research says it may not, but man, it could. We don't know. You know, I haven't seen my parents in, man, it's been a year and a half, or well, I take that back, I saw them this summer one time. They're old. I would have felt horrible if I'd taken something to them. You know, and really our goal is we want to try to boost our staff's morale. You know, so these are things that we're doing. You know, what am I doing physically? What am I doing mentally? What am I doing emotionally? And what am I doing for others? You know, because we all have to have this. You know, and Amy and I, you know, kind of worked on this a little bit. You know, about what we're doing for our staff. You know, and it's okay to decompress. It's okay to leave work at work. So that when we go home, we're being a part of our family. You know, we're enjoying the time that we have with our kids or relatives or whoever we're around. You know, and as educators, that's very tough to do, is to just leave work at work. It's tough. You know, so there's some things. I'm going to let Amy continue here. I don't want to steal all her thunder about some of the stuff that we're actually doing in our building for our staff. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay, it's kind of daunting to be the last person to go, but we'll get through it. Okay, so these are strategies that we've come up with. We wanted to make sure that the goal was, you know, to ensure that it doesn't feel like, oh, just another thing, or to have it feel like homework to this. Oops, stop it. Yes. Well, we wanted to make sure that, you know, all the strategies that we came up with and activities didn't feel like, you know, oh, this is just one more thing added to my plate. We wanted to also say that it's okay to take a break. We wanted to move past the, if you can lean, you can clean kind of mentality. And so the first step that we did was create a weather playlist. And so it's just like happy songs, you know, songs that brought joy to our faculty and staff. And we created a playlist that during our PTHS calm of the storm, during lunch hour, you know, teachers, faculty, staff could all come down to the gym. We have a bunch of activities that we've done. We've done kickball, dodgeball, little putt-putt golf, and it's just like a fun way for, you know, faculty and staff just to feel like, okay, it's okay for me to decompress and take a break. That way I feel more energized and ready to tackle the rest of the you know, class day. And so on Wednesdays during our faculty staff, we do a Wellness Wednesday tip, and it can be something so simple like, oh, drink enough water, or, you know, sing a song, do yoga in your classroom, or something like that. And then another thing that we've come up with is resilience buddy. And what we've ended up doing was we delegated a group of faculty and staff to each one of the members. And so what we'll do on Wednesdays is go and, you know, do our little rounds, check in on them and say like, like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Just like a moment to just sit down and talk to them and see how their day is going, or if there's anything that they need that we can try to accommodate. So what we want to do in the future is maybe do a little PTHS, I forgot the bingo. So we've been doing bingo. It's been awesome. It's been really fun in the mornings. We'll catch it just like, it's quickly thrown into the announcements. We'll have to make sure we're paying attention. The kids, it's so fun to see the students get really involved. They're like, oh, do you have that number? And like, can I go mark it on the board? And it's just a way to bring smiles and, laughter to the classroom. And they love to see that we are having fun and, enjoying being there. And so, again, in the future, we want to do a little scavenger hunt. It'll be similar to bingo. And it'll just be a fun way to have everybody involved and create that camaraderie and teamwork and just, again, to decompress and say that it's okay. We don't have to always stress out. Whenever it starts to warm up, which it has been warming up, it's been awesome. Maybe a picnic activity for us to have lunch during our call to the store. Of course, socially distanced, but it'll just be a fun way to soak in vitamin D and enjoy lunch together and just talk to one another. And it doesn't have to necessarily be about work or complaining or anything like that. It's just to enjoy one another's company. And a way that we have accommodated our faculty staff that might not be very comfortable coming to the gym is that we've offered, Mr. John Romain offered up his art room to do arts and crafts, work with the clay and the wheel. I've also offered to teach basic sewing skills, and so it's been well received. A lot of teachers would come in and sew, and they're just like, oh, this is so great. Like, I feel like finally I can do something with my stress and anxiety, and I can do something tangible with it. And they've totally enjoyed channeling that energy into something productive. So these are resources. Well, this link right here is a resource that we've offered teachers and staff that might not feel very comfortable being open. They might feel a little bit more vulnerable. So this is a link that we've given them. So STS, burnout, moral distress, or any kind of other stress is an issue for them. There's a screening, a couple of questions for them to answer, and resources based on their responses. And again, to let them know that it's okay to take a break. So we suggested, pick a day out of the week. Like, we always have work, something to do, but choose a day out of the week to where you can leave your surface at school. So that way you're not trying to, you're not allowing yourself to take work to home. And encouraging them to disconnect over the weekend, even from social media, on the phone, or anything like that, to kind of just regroup mentally. And then again, on Wednesdays, we're encouraging them that, like, it's okay if you want to just, get up, walk around for 5 to 10 minutes, and then be refreshed to, again, continue on the day. So, again, it's been really well received. Just even walking down the hall and running into faculty and staff, like, everybody's just more like upbeat and happy, and that translates to the students, to how they're reacting to us, and it's just been really well. So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, guys. I know that was a little long, but this is so important to us, and we appreciate sharing with you, and invite you to come over on Wednesdays if you want during lunch. Also, the month of January was Board Appreciation Month. We couldn't have you guys in the gym with the games and all that kind of stuff, and it did take us a little bit longer than expected, but we had something made for you in the hub, so I think you guys will appreciate that. So we made it here. And so we just want to present that to you guys. And again, thank you so much for your time.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are teachers really embracing this? They're really embracing it?
Yes.
Okay. And then my next question is could you see something like this working at other schools where they be scaffolding?
Yes. That's something that we'd be more than happy to go and present at other schools as well.
And so the main goal is just really to get teachers to decompress, relax, calm down. What happens, okay, I noticed you got that site there for somebody to go to. What happens if you find out that there's a teacher that's really needing some additional help and relaxing?
We're appointing at Cassandra.
We share a resource that's with them, that's
covered by our
Oh, we
insurance
have-
for professional
Say that
mental health
again.
that they needed. There is some services that are available through our insurance to where people can get mental health treatment if they
Okay.
need it, or they can talk to other people. And we shared a document with our staff.
Yeah, that's one thing we did address first on.
Yeah. All of our staff that have Anthem have access to this. It's something I discovered back a couple of years ago, but you can do online, you can do on the phone, you can do FaceTime counseling, absolutely zero charge. I mean, absolutely free. And everybody kept saying, well, wait a minute, but there's a copay, it doesn't, you know, if you have this kind of, it's like, no, if you have Anthem, you have access to this absolutely free. Totally private, and so anyway, we provided that information for everyone.
Any other questions?
Excellent job.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the gifts also.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is opportunity for hearing from individuals or groups. Item 4.1 is an opportunity to hear oral communications from the audience regarding items which are included on tonight's agenda.
Good evening. Appreciate you letting me come to speak tonight. What I want to speak about is the racial equity unity.
And you're Mr. White.
Yes,
Right,
I'm
okay.
Yama White.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right.
What I want to speak about was I just had a few questions, and given that I only have limited time, 5 minutes or so, if I could get some quick answers on those. My first question is dealing with how whoever made the decision, who decided on who would be added to this committee, what, I guess, credentials or whatever you look for to decide who would be on the committee, and who could ever answer that.
So, Will Black answer that?
As we described in an earlier meeting, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Should I get them? I guess I'm okay. Should I get the microphone?
No, let me go be on video.
Okay. We'll have to trade, you know. Thanks. What we did, we consulted with both of our university consultants, the two professors involved in our racial equity initiative. That's Dr. Greg Benson from UK and Dr. Roger Cleveland, who was from K-State but now is at Eastern. And we asked both of them, how should we form the committee? What would you know, what process should we use? And what I did was just basically follow those suggestions. And it was, you know, they had slightly different suggestions, so we kind of put the two together, but it was remarkably similar. And so what we look for is a committee that is balanced by different roles in the community, balanced by gender, balanced by race, and balanced, and we look for community members who possess certain characteristics, a sense of, you know, a commitment to truth, a commitment to good communication and demonstrating good communication with their community members, their fellow community members, a commitment to working toward a solution to problems. In other words, commitment toward improving the school district. And then last, a willingness to work together on a team. You know, that they would be willing to get in there and work hard, but work collaboratively. Those are some of the main ones, and I may be missing one, but off the top of my head, those are some of the characteristics. And then we convened, we asked different people in the community. NAACP suggested 2 members, and we took those 2 members. at their face value. In other words, we didn't debate it. We just took who they suggested. We then we also talked to we talked to a couple of industry leaders in the community, and then of course we had a couple of school board members, which both professors recommended, and then definitely a couple of parents also, and we got suggestions on parents from different principals, again trying to balance our committee as well as possible demographically. So that was the process.
So you said you asked people in the community gave you references or people who they thought would be perfect for this position. And as you stated, I know two prominent former staff members, one a principal, one a teacher. Ms. Hurt and Ms. Austin asked you personally to add me to this list. I kind of feel offended that all the things you named, I think I fall in those. But before I go any further on that part, I must say that when I spoke with you and Dr. LeBoon at Ninth Street Church of Christ back in December, we spoke about this initiative committee. I asked you both. I said I would love to be on it, showing my desire to work in this community. I then emailed you, or I spoke at the January board meeting, January 11th, and asked again. It should be in the minutes, I'm assuming. Then I emailed you on the 15th. That's 3 times I asked. That shows commitment to be on this committee. You just spoke on commitment. I was on your site base for the school system. I run an organization. I'm an executive director of an organization. I've dealt with racial inequalities. Worked at the Housing Authority of Paducah, was racially discriminated against. So I have the experience of dealing with that, how to deal with diversity. But apparently you feel that I don't fit the qualifications that you're looking for. I know a lot of parents would love to see me on this committee because they know I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be a rubber stamp. So I feel that you, or whoever, is keeping me off for that reason, because I will not be a rubber stamp. I'm going to ask you again for the 4th time. Now, I know you got your committee, but so far all y'all done, from what you said, is got to know each other. One thing in your community roles that you don't have on there is an African-American father with a child in the school system. You have parents who have graduates, but not one person on there. In your roles, you're missing one. But I've asked you 3 times to be that one. You don't have that on there. A African-American father that has a child that's in the school system. So I'm asking again for the 4th, I guess you know, 5th time, to be added to this committee. I believe I can bring some experience to it. And one other question I have is, I see Dr. Hudson is no longer on the committee. Is there a reason for that? Can that be answered? I believe he was replaced by Ms. Hancock, am I correct? Or Ms. Howard, I'm sorry. Replaced by you.
I chose to step down.
Okay. I just heard about that, so I was just wondering if there was a reason for that. My last question, again, I appreciate y'all giving me this opportunity, does, maybe Dr. Shaw, you can answer this for me, do you have any dealings with the committee in any way?
Have I had any dealings with the committee?
Yes.
As far as the first couple of things you spoke on, no, I've not been a part of who's on the committee. We recorded the first version. The first time they met, the last 2 have not been recorded, I don't think. I did watch that afterwards just to start listening to the process. But no, I've not been engaged with them in the meetings, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, those are my questions. And again, like I said, I feel kind of slighted considering that I don't believe you get too much requests from parents to be on committees with school systems. And maybe Ms. Allison Steve can answer related to that, or your teachers. You don't get much response from parents asking to be part of doing something in the community, in some sense maybe, unless it's athletic. But I'm asking to be a part of the committee. I guess you can say, it makes me feel like I'm begging, but it's not it's begging. is I want to be part of something that's going to make our school system better. I'm a part of this community. I have kids in this community, and I want to see growth. One of the things I think you're talking about on this committee is getting more African American teachers. I went to an HBCU, so there may be a connection there at any point. I mean, I don't know, but it could be. I still have connections with Kentucky State University. So that's all I have. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you again.
Mr. Black, did you have anything else you wanted to say regarding selection for that?
Just to clarify, when Mr. White made his request in front of the board, and actually I don't recall in our conversation him specifically asking to be on the committee. Maybe I'm misremembering that. That conversation was in December. But by the time he did email me and request to, in front of the public meeting, to be on the committee was formed. In other words, we had already gone through and had a list of people. I did call Mr. White immediately after he sent me the email, and I told him, I thanked him first for his interest, and I reiterated that I enjoyed talking with him, with Dr. Balloon back in December, and that I really was looking forward to getting him involved in the process. I'm sorry that he feels slighted. That was not my intention by any means. In fact, I've spoken with Dr. Vincent since then about getting together with Mr. White, and I told Mr. White on the phone back when I did call him that we would definitely get him involved in a meaningful way, that the committee was already about 4 or 5 people too big than the universities had recommended. And so we were over the limit, and I said, I'm not trying to keep you out of this process. I will, give you my word. We'll get you involved in a meaningful way. I just need to get a little further into the audit, and Dr. Vincent even talked to him about Mr. White's concern back then, and said, I want to get other people involved in this process. And he said there will definitely be opportunities for that. So thank you for volunteering. I'm all about getting you involved. Like I said, in fact, I'd love to talk with you more. I talked with Dr. Vincent earlier about maybe even setting up a conversation with you to get your feedback now on the process and to begin thinking about how we might get you involved. So sorry if you felt slighted. It was not my intention, but look forward to continuing to move forward and to make Paducah a more equitable school district. Thanks.
Are there any other comments from the audience regarding items which are included on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, item 4.2, are there any oral communications from the audience regarding items which are not included on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve item 5.0, which is the consent agenda? And I'll read the amendment, which is to 5.9, which is per board policy leave of absences. The superintendent requests unpaid leave for educational and professional purposes for the following dates. And this is adjusted to Thursday, March 18th. Conversations with community leaders, 1/2 day. I think he's still in the process of arranging that. Friday, March 19th, conversations with the community leaders, 1/2 day. Again, the same thing. Tuesday, March 23rd, diversity and inclusion training with Pastor Edward Palmer, which is a 1/2 day, and Wednesday. And this is February 24th. Was that done, or is that that was the one that you've completed already? Or is that a typo?
That should say March. I apologize.
Yeah, okay.
Pastor Palmer, Friday night late, had to adjust some days, and so that's just my typo relative to that. So it should say Wednesday, March 24th.
As
We're going
opposed
to
to
do the 24th and 25th, but that's his schedule changed, and so we adjusted that back today, actually, when we got it finalized. And my 18th and 19th are tentative meetings, just so you understand the process that we've got in place is the days that are unpaid leave are recorded in our absence system as unpaid leave days. And so I've got a cumulative total of those as we're going forward. So that's for accounting purposes, for finance, and that's how we handle absences across the district for everyone employed.
So is there a motion to approve item 5.0 consent agenda with the amendment to 5.9 as read?
I move a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. Item 6.1, change order number 4, Art Building Renovation BG 20-166. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve change order number 4 for the Art Building Renovation Project as outlined by Matt DeLuca, JRA Architects. The change order will increase the contract sum by $9,699.63. And there's a couple of different things: wood block for a roof curb, a flashing, some masonry sealer, and wainscoting on part of the weight room. Is there a motion to approve item 6.1?
I'll make a motion, we approve 6.1, change order number 4 for the art building renovation project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. Item 6.2, payments to contractors BG 20-166. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the following payments to contractors for the art building renovation project. Payment application number 4 to Ray Black & Son, $104,000, $147.29. Direct payments to vendors, Cape Electric, Architectural Sales, Bacon Farmer Workman, and those are $6,000, $32,000, $1,000 roughly payment. Is there a motion to approve item 6.2?
I'll make a motion, we approve item 6.2, payments to contractors.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. Item 6.3, payments to contractors, BG 17-179. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the payments to contractors for the Innovation Hub BG 17-179 as outlined below. Payment application number 28 to contractor Ray Black & Son for $79,045. Direct payment to vendors, Jake Shelby Enterprises, $5,568, Wausau Tile, $6,647, and Baker Farm and Workman, $627. Is there a motion to approve item 6.3?
I'll make a motion, we approve payment to contractors for the Innovation Hub, item 6.3.
Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. Item 6.4, payments to contractors. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the following payments to contractors for the Paducah Head Start project. Bacon Farm and Workman Engineering, $6,478. Is there a motion to approve item 6.4?
I'll make a motion, we approve item 6.4.
A second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes. And is there, I think that's all of the action items. Is there a motion from the board to go into executive session regarding personnel and property and potential litigation?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there are no questions, call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBoon?
Yes.
We can stay in here. Correct.